Melanie from Melanie's Muses here, where I muse about things in the entertainment world that are appealing to me, and hopefully you guys stay along for the ride. For today's video, I want to talk about Midnight Sun. For those of you that have been living under a rock or maybe just don't care, Midnight Sun is the new book by Stephenie Meyer, and it is the Twilight story but told from Edward's perspective. Those of you familiar with my channel know that normally if I do a book review, there are no spoilers, but for those of you that haven't read the original series or watched the movies, the spoilers may apply to you, but I'm not going to give away any big secrets from Midnight Sun. But just to be safe, I'm going to say a spoiler warning is in effect starting now. So as I already said, Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer is the original Twilight book, but it is told from Edward's perspective. Most of the original series was told from Bella's perspective, although we did get some very boring Jacob bits as well. I was never team Jacob. But I have to say, even with the original books, I was very much team Alice and Jasper. Unlike most books, I have to say I personally prefer the movie perspective for the series, other than the fact that you don't get quite as much Alice and Jasper as you do in the books, especially Alice. The original Twilight books, all four of them, were not written in a way that appealed to me. I was not a fan of Stephenie Meyer's writing, although I have to commend her world building. I love the Twilight world. I love that all of her rules are so set in place and she doesn't deviate from them, and I thought she did a fantastic job. I mean, you could just tell in her head everything was laid out. Twilight fans probably remember that there was talk of Midnight Sun 15 years ago, but some of it leaked online. At that point, Stephenie Meyer was like, no, I'm not going to do it. There will be no book from Edward's point of view. And it's just kind of floated around out there until suddenly this year there was the announcement it was being released. I know there are a lot of haters out there and a lot of people that don't think this should sit in the vampire world, but for me, although they are not my preferred vampires, anytime an author can bring something completely new to the table and keep the rules consistent, I will usually at least give it a try. And I have to say, in the end, I did become a big Twilight fan, mainly because of the movies. In fact, I only read the books originally because Em wanted to read them, and she was very young at the time, and some other parents from her school were a bit iffy about whether they were appropriate. They were totally appropriate, I had nothing to worry about. But of course then I got invested too, because that's what happens. So Midnight Sun. I have to say, of all of the books I've read by Stephenie Meyer, Midnight Sun is definitely my favourite. I don't know if it's because it took 15 years to craft, whether she's had excellent editing services, or maybe because this is just the version that she wanted to tell all along. It is much darker than the original Twilight series, and you get so much insight hearing it from Edward, because here's a bit of a spoilery bit in case you haven't seen them. He's telepathic, meaning he can hear the thoughts of everybody around him, and obviously one of the big draws with Bella is that he can't hear her thoughts. Or so we think. In the book we actually find that Edward finds that quite disturbing, and they do go into some more details about it and stuff that didn't come out in the original series, but those are pretty big spoilers, so we'll leave those there. For me, following Edward's thought process made this far more interesting. So I always thought from the original Twilight point of view, it was a little bit strange. You know, you've got Edward who's almost 100 years old at high school, falling in love with a teenage girl who seems to have no cares about anything going on. And yet you're supposed to believe that it's okay for him to stalk around in her bedroom, watch her sleep. For me, there are a lot of dodgy undertones in the original series, and these are all addressed in Midnight Sun, and it makes it really dark, and for me, a much better read. I know there are fans out there that are hating on it, said it's been too long, 15 years was too long, nobody wanted this from Edward's point of view with him being all creepy, and you get to see a lot more of the vampire instinct from him in this. But by far, the best bit in this book is when you get to hear what the other vampires in the family are thinking. Not only do you get a whole new take on Alice and Jasper, especially Jasper, there's a lot of story about him that wasn't apparent from the movies and the original books, because Bella's perspective wouldn't be able to pick all of this up. With Edward being able to hear the other vampires' thoughts, you get their stories too. So we have a lot from Carlisle and Esme, and we have a lot from Emmett and a fair amount from Rose, who's always been a favourite because Rosalie is not on Team Bella at all, and that always works for me. I know, I'm terrible. Apart from one little throwaway line in the book that I wasn't thrilled with, and it's a big spoiler so I'm not going to say it, other than it has got something to do with Alice, The book worked for me. I absolutely loved it. The baseball scene, phenomenal. By far one of my favourite scenes in the original movie, and I guess in the original book, but the movie more so with the killer soundtrack. In this book, it is fabulous. Absolutely blew my mind. If you've read the original books, I highly recommend reading Midnight Sun. I know there's a lot of bad press about it out there, but I love it. It gets a solid 5 stars from me. If you haven't read them, I'd say watch the movies. I know, that's really, really bad. Watch the movies. If you haven't read any of the other books, but you've seen the movies, you can totally jump in with Midnight Sun and know where you're going with that. But I loved it. Dark and twisty and funny. It was really funny. I laughed out loud on more than one occasion. From looking around the internet, I see that there are possibly 2 more books that will be coming out in the Twilight universe. This is from Stephenie Meyer, even though she said before she was not going to do any more Twilight stuff. Then we got Midnight Sun, so I don't know. I really, really hope, especially because of one of the throwaway lines in the book, that we are going to get more Alice and Jasper, especially Alice's story. Jasper's story, you kind of know the basis of it from the earlier books and movies, but Alice, we get to learn some new stuff about Alice in this book. And you really get to see how her precog skills and Edward's mind-reading skills work together. Absolutely amazing insight into that. It gave it a whole new perspective and I loved it. And I think that about wraps it up. If you have got a copy of Midnight Sun and you've read it, please feel free to leave spoiler-free notes in the comments. I would love to hear what you think. If you haven't read it and you're thinking you might, let me know that too. If you've never read anything or done anything with the Twilight books or movies, because I know at least a couple of muses out there that have no interest in them at all, let me know that too. And let me know if maybe this has changed your mind just a little bit. And with that, I think it about wraps it up. Huge thank you to everybody who has hung out to hear me talk about Midnight Sun. I really would love to hear what you think about it. Please be sure to do all the fun YouTube things, like, comment, and subscribe, and share. Let your friends know what's going on. And talking of sharing, make sure you join us on Facebook every Sunday at noon Eastern Time. Me and my husband Greg do Facebook Live. We give stuff away. We talk about TV shows, books, things like this. Sometimes I dress up like this, and sometimes I look a little bit more normal. Actually, I just finished filming a Facebook Live and I did the contacts and everything on the live because I knew I was going to be talking about this. And if you're not a big Facebook fan, that's okay too. I have a website, melaniesmuses.com, so as well as following me on YouTube, you can catch up with me there. There are song lists and giveaways and book reviews, all sorts of stuff going on. You never know what's going on. Head there, melaniesmuses.com. And then of course, make sure you have your notifications turned on so that you get to see any more videos that I post. And feel free to go back and look over some of the older ones. Who knows, maybe you'll find something that you like. And I hope to see you back here next time when, who knows what I'll be talking about. See you soon. Bye.